Salvete, this is for Storybook Latin Year 2, Lesson 1. Today we're talking about present tense verb endings. So this will cover pages 5, 6, and 7 in your workbooks. And this will also give you what you need to complete the pensum on pages 9 and 10. Okay, so we're going to talk about present tense verb endings again. We learned these last year. So, do you remember from last year what your present tense verb endings are? If you do, maybe you can take a minute to say them, see if you can remember them now. If you don't remember, that's okay. The endings are o, is, it, and then we have imus, itis, and unt. Okay? So we have o, is, it, imus, itis, unt. And remember, we sing those to the tune of the farmer in the dell. So o, is, it, imus, itis, unt, hi-ho the dairy-o. And remember, it's easier to do those with a word attached, like scribo. So we can say scribo, scribis, scribit, scribimus, scribitis, scribunt, hi-ho the dairy-o, the Agricola and the Fertile Crescent. So those are the present tense verb endings, okay? And we're going to talk a little bit more about what these do today, okay? So, but first, we want a little reminder, what is a verb? Question mark. Okay, remember, a verb is something, a word that shows action, okay? So a verb like hit or run, those are verbs, okay? And while we're talking about verbs, let's remember what a noun is. Noun, question mark. A noun is a person, place, or a thing. So, like a tree, or a lake, or a boy. Okay? So, verb is action, noun is person, place, or thing. Okay? What are some examples of verbs in Latin? Can you take a minute now and think of any verbs you can think of in Latin? Okay, hopefully you thought of a few. A few I thought of are, we'll make a box here to put our verbs in. Okay, we have audit. Okay, remember that means he hears. Okay, we have scribit. Remember that means he writes. We have ambulat. Remember that means he walks. Okay. And then we have videt. Remember that means he sees. Okay. Audit, scribit, ambulat, videt. Those all show action. So those are verbs. Can you think of any nouns in Latin? I'll give you a minute to see if you can think of some nouns. Okay, a few examples I thought of. Make a box for our nouns. We have everyone's favorite, discipulus. Okay, that's a student. We have femina. That's a woman. Okay, we have solum, solum soli, that's for floor. And then we have venter, and I'm going to write the genitive too because it's different. Venter ventris, remember that means stomach. It's one of our words that we learned last year. So these are all persons, places, or things. So those are nouns, okay? So we have nouns and we have verbs, okay? Now I am going to, let's Now remember what we call groups of noun endings and groups of verb endings, right? So when we take nouns and put them with a group of endings, remember that's called a declension, okay? Remember those are the 5 endings that we talked about: nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, ablative, okay? So we'd say discipulus, discipuli, discipulo, discipulum, discipulo, okay? And we'd put all those endings on. We won't worry about that today, but just remember those groups of endings are called declensions. And then verbs, when we put a group of endings on like this, o, is, it, im, is, it, is, unt, those are called conjugations, okay? Now, why do we have groups of endings called declensions and groups of endings called conjugations? Well, for nouns, the different endings tell us what they're doing in a sentence, remember? So if it's a subject, the nominative, that's doing the action. Maybe that's someone hitting the book, okay? And if it's in the accusative case, like the book is in the accusative case, it's being hit, okay? The action is being done to the book. So that's why we have different endings for nouns. All right, we're going to erase the nouns so we can talk more about verbs, okay? Now, why do we have different endings for verbs? Okay, we have different endings for verbs so that we know who is doing the action, okay? So remember, when we learn verbs, we learn them in the third person singular. So audit, scribit, ambulat, videt. Those all mean he, she, or it does. He, she, or it hears. He, she, or it writes. He, she, or it walks. He, she, or it sees, okay? And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a bit, okay? So, the verb endings tell who is doing the action, okay? So we've got verbs, we've got nouns. Here's some examples of our verbs. I'm going to erase these, okay? And we're going to talk a little bit more about these endings, okay? So remember, we have 6 endings for our present tense verbs. Okay, so we're going to divide this up into a box. Okay? And for each column, like this is what we call singular. That means there's only one person doing the action. This is what we call plural. That means there are multiple people doing the action. It could be 2, 3, 4, 100, but it just means more than one person doing the action. And then over here, we have what person? So we have first person, second person, and third person. So a reminder, first person is I did something. Second person is you did something. Third person is he did something, or she, or it, okay? And then singular or plural. So if we're in plural and it's first person, we say we did it, okay? There was a group of us. We are the first person, okay? But it's plural, so there's more than one. If it's second person, you say you all. Remember our hand motion? You all did it, okay? If it's third person, it's not he, she, or it, it's they. They did it, okay? We are over here and they over there did the thing, okay? So remember our hand motions for the nominative pronouns. Remember we go ego to is, ea, id, nos, vos, id, okay? That's saying I, you, he, she, or it, we, you all, and they. This is the same idea, okay? We're saying I did, you did, he, she, or it did, we did, you all did, there, or they did, okay? So you can think in your head, when you see these endings, o, is, it, Imus, itus, unt. You can do the same motions. O, is, it, imus, itus, unt. Okay? Because those are talking about people. Okay? Who did the action? So that is why we have present tense verb endings. We have different endings to say who is doing something. Okay? And we're going to do a lot of examples of that here in just a bit. Okay? And if you want to read more about this, you can read more about this on page 5. Okay? That talks about what we just talked about. Okay. So, again, we're talking about present tense verb endings. So what does present tense mean? Okay? Present tense means it's happening right now. Okay? So when we have verbs, we can have past tense, it happened in the past. We can have present tense, it's happening right now, or we can have future tense. And what that would sound like in English is we could say, yesterday we kicked the ball, or we could say, today we kick the ball, or we could say, tomorrow we will kick the ball, okay? And we're going to learn all those different tenses in Latin eventually, either this year or next year. But for today, we're just talking about present tense. So whenever we talk about a verb in Latin right now, we're always going to talk about present tense. And then we're just going to put the different endings on to show who is doing the action. Okay, one more thing you'll notice. You see some of these letters are in parentheses, the I's and the U's, and you might wonder why that is. Well, for certain verbs like ambulat or vidette, notice they have an A or an E. And when you use these with these endings, you don't really need the I or the U anymore, so they just drop off. Remember last year we talked a little bit about which vowels are stronger and weaker, which ones push the other one out of the word. And we'll talk about that more later this year. You don't need to really worry about it for now, just mention it. So when you write just the endings by themselves, you want to write with the parentheses, and you just remember that sometimes the I or the U will drop off, okay? All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to show how to conjugate a few different verbs, okay? So on page 7, it shows you how to conjugate cado, okay? We have cado, cadis, cadit, cadimus, caditus, cadunt, okay? So remember, cadit means he, she, or it falls. So if I say cado, that means I fall. Cadis means you fall. Cadit means he, she, or it falls. Cadimus means we fall. Caditus means you all fall. And cadunt means they fall. Okay? So on page 6, what we want you to do is you read the word in Latin. Okay, so dico is the first example. So dico is I say, okay, because it has the O ending. But then they want you to do dicus. Well, you have to figure out first, what word is that? Well, you can see the D-I-C beginning, the dic. That is from dicit, okay, and then you can say, okay, it's got that I-S ending, dicus. So that's second person singular. And then, so that would be you say, okay? So for all of those, you write down in English what that Latin word is saying, okay? And then at the bottom of the page, there's surgit, okay? And it gives English, so surgit is he, she, or it rises. So they give English for she rises, they rise, and you need to put the right endings with the word. So we will talk about how to do that, and that is what you will be doing in the pensum as well on pages 9 and 10. Okay, so we have our endings here, o, is, it, imus, itus, unt. But now we need to know how to conjugate these. So, when they give you a task, like all those versions of dico, dicus, dicamus, what's easier is to write out the whole word, write out all 6 endings, okay, and then you can see where it goes and which person is doing the action, okay? So here's how we're going to do this. We're going to have a box here. So remember, this is singular, this is plural, okay? And then we have first person, second person, third person, okay? And this is just our endings. So o, is, it, imus, itus, unt. What we're going to write here is who is doing the action. Okay, so it's I, you, he, she, or it, we, you all, and they. Okay, so this is in English, this is the person that's doing the action. Okay, and then we've got a goof here on our whiteboard, so I'm going to erase these endings for now, and I'm going to put them back up here. Over here, I'm going to write the same thing again. And here is where we're going to practice our different endings, okay? So we've got I, you, he, she, or it, we, you all, they. We've got our endings, o, is, it, imus, itus, unt. All right, so here's the examples that we're going to do. We're going to do scribbit, bibbit, and coppit, okay? So for scribbit, what's the root? We just take off the it, right? So we have scrib it, okay? So now we take this stem, I said root, I meant stem, scrib, and we just add all the different endings onto it, okay? So we go scribo, scribis, scribit, scribimus, scribitis, and scribunt. Okay? Scribo, scribis, scribit, scribimus, scribitus, scribunt. Okay? That means I write, you write, he, she, or it writes, we write, you all write, or they write. Okay? So if this was in your book, like on page 6, where they have it for dicit and surgit, okay, if I asked you scribimus, you could look right here, you could look right here, and you can say, ah, that's we write, okay? So if you write this out, and actually you don't have to write it out, you have it on page 5, okay, so you have this and this on page 5, so you can look at these, and then you can figure out what the different endings mean. All right, let's do it for bibbit. Okay, what do you think the stem of bibbit is? So again, we just take off the it, and we have bib. Okay, so bib is the stem. So now we take the stem and we just put the different endings on. So we have bibbo, bibis, bibbit, bibimus, bibitis, bibunt. Okay, bibo, bibis, bibit, bibimus, bibitis, bibunt. That means I drink, you drink, he, she, or it drinks, we drink, you all drink, and they drink. Okay? So that is what that means. Now we have cop it. Let's do that quick. All right, so what is the stem of cop it? Again, we just take the it off, and we have cop is the stem. So now we just put the different endings on, and we have capo, copis, copit. I forgot to say copit means catch. We have copimus, copitis, and coppant. So this means I catch, you catch, he, she, or it catches, we catch, you all catch, and they catch. Okay, so that is how you conjugate the verbs and put the different endings on and discover who is doing the action. Okay, so in your pensum, that's what you're going to be doing on page 9. You're going to write out the present tense verb endings. That's these from page 5. Yep. And then you're going to conjugate surrogate. So you're going to put all the endings on surrogate, okay? Just like we did up here. All right? And then you're going to translate the different forms of surrogate into English. So remember, surrogate means rise. So it would be I rise, you rise, and then just on down, okay? Just like this chart here says. All right? And then on page 10, this gets kind of tough, okay? They give you surgimus, dicatus, and cadunt, and they want you to translate those into English. Well, the first thing you need to figure out is what are those words? Well, surgimus, you can see surg, that's from surrogate. He, she, or it rises. Dicatus, you got dic from dicit, okay? He, she, or it speaks. And cadunt, you've got cod, from cadit, he, she, or it falls, okay? So you've got rises, speaks, falls, and then you have to figure out what are those endings, okay? You have an imus ending, you have an itis ending, and you have an unt ending, okay? So you have to say who is doing the action, who is rising, who is speaking, who is falling, okay? And then write that in the lines. I'll give you a hint. The first one would be we rise, okay? Because it's this first person plural. And then, translating the English into Latin, there's I fall, we speak, and you all, okay, you all stand. So again, fall is cadit, speak is dicit, and stand is surrogate. Okay, so surrogate could either be stand or rise, something like that. Okay, so now that you know that it's cadit and dicit and surrogate, now you need to look at these endings and figure out if it's I fall, what ending do I put on cadit? If it's we speak, what ending do I put on dicit? Okay, and that's how you do that. And then in class today, in class this week, when we get together, or if you're doing this at home, maybe you'll do it on your own, we will have a quiz that will go over these things. So there will be some vocabulary on the quiz, and then there will also be some things where you have to fill in these endings and translate these words from Latin into English or from English into Latin. Okay, I believe that is all for this week. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for all your work. Hopefully your work goes well, and I'll see you in the next lesson.